All right, guys. Episode number 3.
It's number 3.
Back. We're back.
We're back. Third time's a charm.
Hopefully, yeah. You know, This is something that I'm loving.
Me too.
Every time I leave this room, I feel more and more inspired for the next time. So,
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah,
again, Even so, and in talking to you guys about some of the things that are coming down the pipeline as well, and hopefully our very, very awesome future.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I mean, we'll see.
Absolutely.
We'll see. I know we had discussed a little bit about getting to know each other individually, right? And allowing our listeners to kind of take a deep dive into our personal lives.
Yeah.
And we wanted to start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're on the hot seat, man.
Yeah,
you're in the hot seat.
Yep.
Yeah, well, and at the end of the day, before this, if you don't mind, the thing that I'm hoping for of all of us sitting down, everybody's always got their own story, right?
Sure.
And by expressing and sharing those things, you learn a little bit about each individual, but there's little tidbits that you may be able to take about your day or learn something from, or and be able to apply that to your life in some way, shape, or form. So that's one of the things that we're searching for. I know I am,
of course,
to share with other individuals, and I know you guys are too. So there's no restrictions, and that was kind of a promise we made to each other in the beginning of this, whether it's from conversation, or some of the events and things. So if it's brought up, there's no backing out. You have to do it whether you like it or not, right?
I love that authentic sigh. Whenever we mention the physical events. I'll tell you this, though, man, I'm pretty proud that we're not taking it easy on each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like some of these events are going to be legit.
Gonna be brutal.
And so
the one that you mentioned last time that we haven't said publicly, that Brad said, I think that's the most brutal in its own right. Yeah. And we'll bring that up later.
Yeah.
So definitely some brutal events, and we are taking it out on each other.
And again, it's all out of your comfort zone, and that's what it's about, right?
Yeah,
you got to challenge those fears and approach them head on. So
I agree.
Yeah, man.
That's what it's about, and hopefully it'll be fun in the same sense too.
It's going to be fun.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think at this table, the three of us, look, we talk a big game about being hard and all of this, and I'm making fun of ourselves, right? At the end of the day, we all have fun. I mean, hell, we wouldn't be here with that if we didn't, right?
Exactly.
And so, you got to laugh at yourself every once in a while. I know people are going to be laughing at us, so we might as well join them.
100%,
and so,
right?
Let's start firing it, Mike. I've been waiting for this. I thought of some questions last night.
Right. I do have a good leading question, if you don't mind, and it's something that we've discussed your father in almost every podcast that we've done, and his influence, right? So I'm going to tell you, man, Chad and I, when we're not around you, talk about you and everything you've done in your life, and it's a lot, man. And I'm not trying to falsely build you up. I mean this with every, bone in my body. I'm wildly impressed with what you've done. We had talked about, you had bought yourself a car, and you had rebuilt it all on your own. I naturally assumed that your father was right there beside you, and the answer to that was no, he was not. He kind of allowed you to carve your own path. He forced you to learn that on your own. The B's in school, he said, if you got B's, I'll buy you that car. You did not. He did not buy you that car. That's a man of very powerful influence, right? Do you see that approach of, something tells me you're not a man that likes his hand being held, right? Would you want something different in your relationship with your father, or are you so glad? Because, hey, look, I'm going to tell you, I don't want you to make you emotional at all, because, Chad and I, it's very public that our father was not around. So I envy that relationship, Your father seems like a hell of a man, and look at you. You turned out to be top tier, in my opinion, man. Would you have preferred him telling you which wrench to use? Would you have preferred, no, you know something? You tried. I'm going to buy you the car. Or do you prefer this way? Do you think your dad made you the man you are today?
Wow, that's a great question. And I appreciate everything that you said, 100%.
Yeah, I meant that, buddy, and so does Chad.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I'm
Wait, no,
happy. I don't think that I would change anything.
Good.
I don't, he was there to guide me when needed.
Yeah.
I've always been of the mindset that you can tell someone how to do something, and they may listen, they may not.
Yeah.
Or you can have them do it themselves and then show where the mistake was had, and they will remember it forever.
Right.
It's kind of like with superintendents. I will walk into a house before an inspection, and I'll see something that I know is wrong, and I won't tell them about it.
Oh, I like this.
I will let the city inspector come and tell them about it.
Yes.
Because the thing that's going to happen is they have to pick up the phone that next day and call me and go, I failed an inspection. And then it's like, well, why? And it's an item that I may have seen. And I'll tell them I saw that yesterday. You know, and I've had this, you know, come back to me several times. Well, why didn't you tell me? And my response is always because you never would have remembered it past that. But the fact that you failed at this one thing that I did see and I acknowledged and I saw it and I held it from you, you will remember that forever and it will never happen again.
Right there, you are your father.
Yeah.
So you would rather cost yourself, let's say, with the city 7 days with getting a CO because you fail an inspection and teach your superintendent the proper lesson than saying, no, I'm going to fix this and we'll talk about it later. You would rather take that route.
I would, and I
love that about you.
I don't know that I've ever associated that with my dad until you said that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Is this the same superintendent that I met? You've used the same superintendent for years, haven't you?
Well, I've known Rico's one of our superintendents now, and him and I have been best friends since we were like 21 years old. I hired him back at Hingham High Saloon for security and stuff like that. And we've just been best friends ever since. But it's been with several different superintendents. It's a mindset that I take with everybody.
Interesting.
I think that's how you learn. Again, you know, I think unfortunately we've been stuck in a society where things are constantly given to you.
Yes.
Monetarily, material-wise, knowledge-wise, and you don't appreciate them.
Yes, man.
Because you didn't suffer anything to gain that knowledge, that material, that object, right? It's kind of like even with the purchase of my own car.
Yeah.
You know, did it suck in the beginning? I was pissed.
Sure, of course.
But I treasured that car because I made the money.
Yeah, man.
I bought the car. I put the money into it. I did everything. So I valued that.
Yeah.
Was it material? Yeah, but it was something more than material. It was one of the first major things that I purchased and did on my own.
Well, let's face it, man, as a 16-year-old, I'm assuming, 17, whatever. I mean, that's almost a rite of passage, your first car. There's nothing wrong with falling in love with that very material object, right?
Yeah.
It's more than a car, man. You're kind of growing up, you're coming of age. You know, you might be able to take out the girl now, you know, if she says yes.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Side note on that, not to get too personal, but when you grew up financially, were you guys, I'm going somewhere with this, were you guys comfortable? Were you... I'm asking for a reason, but was your dad, what type of household did you live in financially? Like, was money abundant? Were there things provided all the time? Am I making sense? Without getting too personal.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
I'd say we were middle class.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I ever hurt for anything. My dad was a saver as well.
Nice.
And so I got some of that from him a little bit, you know, granted when I got older, I, you know, did some stupid things, I think like most of us do.
Sure.
But no, we live very comfortable. But a lot of times though, if I wanted something, I got it myself.
Absolutely.
From the standpoint of appreciation. And he constantly said that, you know, it's not that I didn't get things, you know, presents for birthdays and Christmases and things like that, but it wasn't outside of the norm,
Absolutely.
if you would, because he liked that aspect of me going to get something. It's kind of funny when cell phones came out, you know, and I hold this to this day. I wanted to get a cell phone and I couldn't, right? And they were like, you need a cosigner. And of course I go to my dad and he's like, there's no way in hell.
Yeah.
And I've had my boys come to me and say, hey, you know, I want this, but I need a cosigner. And I'm like, I'm not the door to knock on, you know, because again, I want you to fight to have that. Again, if I give it to you, you're not going to appreciate it as much.
So that's my point. So that's what I was asking is, you know, I have this conversation with Dylan all the time, and it's so hard to teach. You know, our kids will not know, and this isn't a boisterous statement, but they won't know real struggle, meaning I'm talking about the simple things, you know, going to H-E-B and being able to throw in whatever you want in the cart. Something as simple as that. You buying your own car, you know, when a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, I just bought Skylar her first car. That you buying your own things, you know, you making the life for yourself as you did, it's such a toss-up because you want your kids to have to know what it's like to be self-sufficient and independent, but on the same note, and you don't want your kids to struggle, but on the same note, it's such a hard toss-up, you know, like the genuine struggle and the genuine hardships, because it's what makes people tough and what makes people survive and thrive, much like you have.
100%. You know, and it's funny that you bring that up because Bristol always says, I always wanted a little girl, right?
Okay.
And I always wanted a little girl to spoil the living shit out of.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I knew that, you know, I'd be wrapped around her finger. I would know that, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And so I admire the fact that you have a daughter. I look at all my friends that have daughters. I would spoil the shit out of her. In the same household as a son would treat him completely different. I think one of the reasons being is because I would want a man to treat my daughter that way.
Yes, sir.
And I would want her to get used to being treated that way, not necessarily from a monetary standpoint.
I know what you mean.
I want her to understand it's okay to be treated like a princess because that's what she is, you know, from an emotional standpoint and everything else, and from a support standpoint. And again, not necessarily buying the world for her, but to understand what that feels like.
Absolutely.
And I would break my ass to make sure that I could do that, right? But again, with a man, I would do that. And a boy, I react completely separate and different because I'm raising men. I'm not raising little soy boys, you know, at the end of the day.
Sure.
And I want them to be able to do that as well. And to have that same mentality that they're there as a protector, a provider, emotionally, financially, all of that stuff. And I would want them to get used to that, not to accept anything less than their daddy.
I like that.
Know?
Yeah, I really like that. Let me ask you, when was, because I know I was young, when did you start your first company? You started building at
24 years old.
That's insane, man.
Yeah.
Did you find, and this isn't going to be a, you know, focus-centric, I think that's the term, on your father specifically.
Yeah.
Did he support that? Was he proud of you? Or were you just making your way in the world?
You know, it's kind of funny. It's one of those things I think that a kid always wants to hear is that their father, especially as a guy, that their father is proud of them.
You're damn right.
It's so interesting. And you're right.
It is.
You're right.
You know, and that's something that hurts my heart for you guys.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, and we'll get into the relationships you had with your stepfather and stuff like that, but those are things that you need to hear, right?
Man, let me touch on something real quick, and I'm going to turn it right back on you, and it's something I think about all the time. So, you know, again, and this is not our episode, it's yours. But again, our father wasn't around, right? But my dad's dad, our grandfather, we really looked up to. Now, we had a distant relationship, literal distance.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget this. The first time a father figure said that he was proud, I was 32 years old. Okay, so we had bought, I think it was our third or fourth venue, and he called me. He had heard through the grapevine. He called me.
David?
No, Granddad.
Oh, Granddad.
Yeah, Granddad called me and said, son, I just want to let you know I'm proud. I broke down. 32-year-old man. I broke down. I could not answer him on the phone. And so, and to your point, I don't care who you are, man. It feels really good to be acknowledged, but much less by someone that you're trying to live up to,
100%.
you know? And something tells me you're real good about saying you're proud. So did your dad tell you he was proud at 24?
You know, not necessarily.
Okay.
You know, he kept a lot of that in.
Yeah.
It's not that I didn't think that he thought it.
Yeah.
I just didn't hear it.
But you got to hear it, man.
I did, you know, and when I heard it was after he passed away.
Okay.
And I heard it from everybody that knew. And again, I knew and I had a feeling, right?
Yeah.
But everything that I got from everybody was all he does is talk about you.
Yeah.
He's so proud of what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
He's so proud of the decisions you've made.
Yep.
And that in itself was an immense healing for me, right? Because that's something you, at least myself, have always gone after. And it's not anything that I've said, in jest or out loud to him, but it's always something that was in the back of my mind, is I wanted to make sure that he was proud. And that was a lot of drive too, because while I wasn't a bad kid, I wasn't a good kid, right? I really wasn't, I wasn't into drugs or this, that, and the other. We skipped school. We had fun. We had clean kind of fun. I know, right? Yeah. And I did some things. Yeah. I did some things.
There's the authenticity.
I know, right? I know.
So I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it wasn't until later, where, in the bar industry started drinking and stuff like that. But as a kid, we really didn't do bad stuff. We were always called into the principal's office whenever something was wrong. We had broken into the high school and taken the Christmas tree that was in the courtyard as a senior prank and stuck it on the roof.
Okay.
And of course, when things like that happened, there was a group of like 10 of us. They'd come over the intercom system and they'd start naming people. And we all knew, but it was stuff like that even they were like, they're good kids. They're just, you know what I mean? So it was assuring to hear that.
Yeah, well, I bet it is. And I don't want to commandeer, because you actually always have some really good questions. I do want to know, though, at 24, where did you get your drive from? Because at 24, man, most of us are thinking about girls, beer, and where you're going to spend. Are you going to float the river this weekend, or you know what I mean?
And what type of company was it? I'm sorry, was it construction also?
It was construction. Yeah. So I sold lumber prior to that for a couple different building material stores.
Yep.
I had the opportunity. One of my clients was building in Wimberley and wanted to build in Austin.
Yep.
I was able to get a job through a family member of my wife at the time. I think she was a girlfriend.
We're going to get into that, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Bristol. We love you.
Yeah, no, she's all good with that.
I know.
But through a cousin of hers, he had bought a house and wanted to remodel it. And I had the opportunity to kind of stretch my wings. Mm-hmm. And so we had 2 jobs going, and it allowed me to leave my 9 to 5, basically. So myself and my superintendent that I still work with today, and one of my best friends, him and I did 90% of the work ourselves with our hands, with the exception of like electrical, plumbing, things you need a license for. And that's ultimately how it started. I thought it was fun. I always liked doing stuff with my hands, loved building motors, building cars, just building anything that you can stand back and look at and go, I physically built that with my hands. I've always thought that was pretty cool. Yep. And so from there, it just kind of snowballed. And we got other jobs and stuff like that. And then I built a house out in the hills of Lakeway, which I'll never build in the hills of Lakeway ever again. It's the most insane place to ever build because it's
permitting and things like that.
Permitting, everything's handled through the homeowners association.
Oh yeah, nope, I'm out.
You're spending like $25,000 before you even get a permit. I mean, it was insane. But I've heard a lot of builders will build one house there and then never build there again.
Wow.
I was one of those.
Yeah.
But it just kind of snowballed from there.
Right.
So, and I liked creating. It was a great creative outlet.
Right.
What was the trajectory of that company? Because I know you mentioned through some of your questions, and I'll let you bring it up. So how long did that run?
Yep.
And then how did it come to an end, if you don't mind me asking? And then what was the transition period between phase 2?
Well, I had a great run for several years.
Love it.
Making money, everything's good.
Money, it was something. I did everything myself. I did my own books, ran my own jobs. You name it, I did it. Did my own ordering, takeoff sheet, you name it, design on houses and everything else.
Wow.
In about 2008 into 2010 was when the market started tanking.
Sure.
And I had a lot of investors at that time that I could, bring a deal to and go, hey, I've got X deal that needs X amount of equity, blah, blah, blah. And it had gotten to the point where most of these things were handshake deals and I would front some of the cash on it. And then it came to the point where I had several projects going at the same time and went to the investors and was like, all right, everybody ante up. And they didn't.
Crickets.
And so I got...
Because of the market crash at the time?
Yeah. So they all basically closed their pocketbooks and were like, sorry. So I got help, at the age of, I guess close to 30. and got held with like $6 million in properties, and I had to file bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And I
want to take a dive into that. Yeah, keep going, please.
Yeah, no,
please.
I told myself it would never happen again.
Yeah.
Because as a man, that's sheer failure.
That's exactly what I wanted to touch on, because I know, man, I mean, hell, we just talked about it, but how driven you are, how motivated you are, but I also know that you have a really good reputation, and something tells me that, and bankruptcies happen, man. Most of the time, it is not a reflection of character, okay? Most of the time, it's a reflection of unfortunate circumstances. There are some people that it is a reflection of both. You are not one of those people. Man, how did you deal with that? How did you get through that? And I'm asking because of you specifically. I think I would naturally assume it would tear you up.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. You know, constant sleepless nights.
Of course.
Felt like a failure.
Yeah.
Everybody around you knows what happened. You know, I've always been of the mindset that I buy from people, not companies.
Yeah.
So I had relationships with these people that I owed money.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And they were nice in it. I still do business with a lot of these guys today.
Good.
Because again, they understood it was a shitty spot that I was in, and it wasn't done intentionally. I wasn't doing anything wrong with money or anything else.
Yeah.
These guys just bailed.
Yeah.
You know? And that was one of the things that really, that was a pivoting point in my life. You know?
How so? What do you mean by that?
Well, at the point that was going on, I had gone through my first separation with my wife at the time.
Okay.
And so I was back in the houses because I had no money.
Yeah.
I still had a couple projects going on that lenders were, you know, they knew it was going on. They're like, complete the house, let's get them sold, you know, and they were very kind, you know, and allowed me to finish these couple of houses. So I was laying tile myself, I was installing cabinets, trim, and I'm doing it literally by myself.
Sure.
You know, and I would have a hand.
Exactly.
Exactly. I would have a hand here or there. So I'd get up, you know, 4:30 in the morning, load my truck up with all my tools, and I'd come back at, you know, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And that went on for 6 or 8 months so that I could just complete these jobs, right? And I was scraping by. We were getting loans from my father-in-law just to pay our rent and to buy food. You know, I had a son at that point, and you want to talk about getting kicked in the teeth and feeling like an absolute failure.
Yeah.
That was the lowest of the low.
Can I ask you something? Your wife at the time, not to pry too much.
Yeah, no, bring it.
Was she supportive, or did it drive a wedge?
I don't think that it drove a wedge, but I don't necessarily know that it was supported.
Yeah.
I think it was more or less one of those things is it will be okay, and we have a safety net. And unfortunately, I didn't like the safety net. Not that I didn't like my father-in-law personally, because we got along very well.
Sure.
I didn't like the fact that I had to utilize.
Buddy, I hear that loud and clear.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Absolutely.
it makes. Yeah, it does. To anyone listening, that makes sense.
It's something as a man that I would never do.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is since then, over the years, there's been individuals that have been in positions like that, and I willingly,
of course,
will help them out, right? Because I know what that feels like, and I don't want them to be in a position to ever feel like that again. You know, so rolling through those times, I got it, right? So I always love helping people, but it was one of the lowest times of my life ever. You know, going through a separation. You know, I've got a son that's under 3 years old.
Yes.
You know, we're splitting time. You know, I mean,
what time? I mean, you were building every single day, all day. I mean,
7 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike,
you know?
which cut deeper, the separation or the bankruptcy? And honest question.
You know, because it was at the same time, I don't know that I can tell you, right?
That's a good answer.
You know, I came from a family, my dad got divorced when I was, 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
So I never really had a relationship with my real mom.
Okay.
So what I don't know, I don't know.
To this day?
To this day. And it's not
She's still alive? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Okay.
100%. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so I never really had a relationship with her. I've also got a sister you know, that when my parents got divorced, my dad got me, and my biological mom got my sister. And my sister and I have gotten closer over the years, but we only knew what we knew and what we were told.
Absolutely.
Right? You're at separate ends of the continent. There wasn't much communication with anybody, right?
So she's west or east coast right now? Okay.
Yep. She's up in Maryland.
Oh, okay.
So, or East Coast, yes. So with that said, you know, my biological mom's tried to reach out a couple times, and again, I don't know what I don't know, so I just put it off to the side. I just have no reason or want necessarily.
I hear that.
That may change. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know, so I don't know what I'm missing, right? So with that said, I just kind of, that relationship I put on the side. My dad got married later on to what was my mom up until, or they were married up until about 25 years ago. So they went their separate ways as well. So that dynamic, I never wanted to bring a son up or a child up in that environment, because it's what I came from, right?
Yeah, man.
And so my thought was just get through until he's 18.
Yeah.
Just get through, right? And so that was pretty hard, because I not only failed in business, but then I failed at a relationship that I was just trying to keep together for sake of my son.
Sure.
So I wish I knew the answer to that, but they were both just deep, and that's why it was one of the lowest parts or lowest times of my life ever.
I can't imagine. And so now your mom reaches out every now and then, and it's just kind of arm's length. It's funny, because indifference, I think, is one of the strongest emotions that we can have. It's, in fact, probably the strongest, which is ironic, because you're supposed to feel nothing either way. But my God, man, when you become indifferent to a family member, and especially a parent, it says a lot. It says a lot. It's hard to overcome that.
Yeah.
You know, it really is.
Yeah, and I think it's just because, you know, you grow up differently, and kind of like very similar. If you don't know what you're missing, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
You try to create something to figure out what's missing. You can't, you know.
Well, let's take a little positive turn, if you don't mind. But I also want to get into,
when did the money start coming in, Mike?
Right.
Well, I do want to
still
know,
waiting, like
kind of. But I do want to know what gave you the resolve, because I mean, by all definitions, you are wildly successful, man. So what gave you the resolve to turn this around? I mean, I think guys like you learn more from failures than they do success. What caused you to forge forward, you know, or just plow through, you know, I don't know, man, just the tough times.
Right.
You know, instead of saying, man, I give up, this is just too hard. What was that? Is there something inherent, or is it you're looking at your 3-year-old son like, no, buddy, I got you? What was it?
You know, it's kind of funny. I took probably a 6-month stint from building off. Once I got rid of everything, I started teaching at ACC.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, so I taught for about 9 years, just construction courses and things like that. A buddy of mine is the dean of construction over ACC. So basically, they needed a couple guys to fill in some spots, and I was like, I'm in.
I like this.
I hated school. And this was an area that I never thought that I would enjoy, but I absolutely loved it.
I bet.
I've met one of my best friends from ACC that I actually taught. You guys will meet him. It's a buddy of mine, Eli. And it was a course for ex-felons. And when they came out of prison, they were mandated to go through this course that taught them life skills. How to do a resume, how to use a tool, how to build a shed, how to build something like that. And this kid is one of the most awesome stories, and I have the utmost respect for him than just about anybody on this earth. And, you know, I was able to hire him. I did a stint with Austin Habitat for Humanity years later and hired him over there. And he had told me, you know, back when Amazon just started doing stores, and he was like, you know, I'm really into this Amazon store and this, that, and the other. And he opened a store up and was able to leave Habitat after I had left. And then he got ATM machines and put ATM machines in bars.
You've told me about this guy.
Yeah. Started trading and started getting into crypto, and now his office is his laptop. And he's in Costa Rica right now. You know, and I'm getting videos from him every day, and that's just
lives in Costa Rica.
No, he just goes everywhere. Panama, Costa Rica, Colombia. We're in Vegas at least once a month, once every other month. You know, just we've spent like the past several New Years together. We spend the holidays together. He's family.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I look at him and I'm just so proud of this kid. You know, and we'll grow old together.
Yeah.
He's just a good kid. So I did that. I also worked with a document shredding company. A friend of mine had bought a company called Centex Shred.
Yeah.
And so I was working with him as well, either selling or helping, you know, pick up shred bins. It didn't matter. I was making an income.
Yep.
And, you know, and I've always had 2 or 3 jobs my entire life.
Sure.
Just because that's the way it was, right? Even when I was building houses, I was still working in the bar industry.
Yeah.
You know, so I just always had several gigs because I always wanted that backdrop, right? You know, the security of working and hopefully earning money to support yourself and those that depended on you. So I'd always done stuff.
Yeah.
It was my buddy, his name's Chuck, that owned the document shredding company, and he looked at me one day and he goes, "You're not doing what you're meant to do."
That's a great boss right there.
And he was the one that turned it around completely.
Man.
And he said, "You need to start building again, and I'm going to make sure you do it."
When was this? What time period?
I'd have to look back years. 2009, 2010.
Okay.
And he was like, "You're meant to do this. You have to do it." And so the funny thing was I was having people call me to do jobs and stuff like that, and I just kind of pushed them off, and had a remodel and just dove right in. And he was like, "This is where you're meant to be." Now, granted, I still worked in the shred company, I still worked in the bar industry, and I still worked at ACC.
Yeah.
Because again, bankruptcy was never going to be a choice again.
Right.
You know, so I wanted to make sure I had multiple streams to pull from, number one, but then number two, at this point, I was going through a divorce.
Yeah.
You know, so the biggest thought process in my brain was I've got to raise this boy.
Yeah.
You know, and even though the divorce, we're friendly now, but during the divorce was something that was nasty.
Yeah.
You know, the ugly clause come out and the name calling comes out and everything else, and it's not fun for anybody.
I don't wish that on anybody, man. I mean, I've seen, of course, several friends go through that, and you know, compound that with the bankruptcy, compound that with just trying to, and listen, this isn't a shot, I promise, but trying to feel like a man again, in your own opinion.
100%.
Okay, I'm not calling you less of a man. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the mental turmoil that you had to fight through, but you're here now.
Yeah.
So wife number 2, let's go.
No, and let's step back even further. And this is what I told y'all about, right? All right.
No.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So I was married
I digress.
I know. During the Hingham High Saloon days.
We just established whose house this is when you so emphatically said no. So Chad and I think we're taking the lead, and so let's talk about this. No. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough, buddy.
So I was.
Hell, I don't want to fight.
Mike's like, I've got my list of my own questions.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
This is what we're going to focus on.
Let's go, Mike.
Well, if we're going to be open and honest about everything, I've got to throw the trial marriage out there. You know. So this is Bristol's my 3rd marriage, right? So it's, you know, 3rd time's the charm. This is
Okay.
And I never intended to get married again. I was going to go back to the bar days and just slaying and working. That's all I was going to do. You know, I was like, it worked back then.
Sure.
Kinda.
Why not?
But no, during the bar industry days, I dated a girl.
Okay.
For several years, and I was like, I guess I'm supposed to marry this girl.
Yeah.
You know,
and
age again? I'm sorry. What?
Oh gosh, 22.
Okay.
You know,
Gotcha.
23.
Kid,
yeah, kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, great girl, great family.
Of course.
Just wasn't for me.
Of course.
You know,
Yeah.
the conversation started after we got married, and I was an asshole. I cheated on her constantly.
Oh, wow.
I got caught cheating on her.
And she stuck around.
And she stuck. I would flip the script on her and blame it on her. I was an ass.
Wow.
I was an ass. But I was always open and honest about it, but I was still an ass.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the conversation started of, I'd love to buy a house. You know, I want a dog, so we got a dog.
Okay.
You know, I want to talk about starting to have kids and this, that, and the other. And I knew that I did not want to be in that position 10 years down the road. I knew that if I could not bring a child into a relationship, that this was not fair to her.
Okay.
And I just woke up one day and I said, look, I don't want to be married anymore. And she said, I think we had a disagreement the night before. She's like, oh, you're still upset from last night? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
No kidding.
I don't want to be married.
Wow.
Period. And she was like, well, this is something we can work through. And I said, no, you don't. I don't want to be married to you.
Wow.
And that was, we had maybe 2 conversations after that.
Yep.
And then the last time I've spoken with her was at the courthouse.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. I've seen her in town once or twice.
Yeah.
And she's still around.
Yeah.
She still has my last name, and it sticks out like a sore thumb, of course.
Of course.
And
well, your last
again,
name is pretty special.
I know, right? Shit, it sticks out, right?
I
know.
had to. I can't.
You got to take it.
Yeah.
But again, great girl.
Yeah.
Right? I just knew that I was not in a position to give her what she needed and what she deserved. Mm-hmm. And that was only a marriage that lasted a couple months.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. It was
How long
very
did you guys
short-lived.
date before that?
Probably 2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And even at the wedding, and this is what's bad, I was so intoxicated. I could barely even stand up. At the
Man,
altar.
no kidding. Yeah,
At the wedding?
That's pretty
wedding.
telling, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to get into your business, that is.
It is. And
Yeah.
everybody there, including my dad,
Yeah.
was like, you do not have to do this. And was like,
They
the
just
car's
knew.
over
I mean,
there.
wow.
We'll go spend the week in Mexico. We'll go do this. We'll go do that. We had actually, my bachelor party was spring break in Cancun. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you guys have ever done spring break.
Played a
in
little
like
bit of
Cancun.
golf, watched some movies,
Yeah,
you know.
anything but, right? You know, but we learned to make what was called Mexican flag, and you took, just the shittiest tequila in a plastic jug. They would drill a hole in the top, pour some Sprite and grenadine in it, and you would walk around and just shoot it into people's mouth. We were at the altar passing this bottle around, at the altar drinking. My buddy Rico, who's with me today, was there even.
Yeah.
We were hammered. And I should have known at that point, this is not good,
No.
But that was an age when that's all we did was party.
Well, sure.
But still, I did this in front of family.
Yeah.
I did this in front of my grandparents, her family, everybody. Right?
Was she a drinker?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was a partier too.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that when you work in the industry, you guys know this as well. When you work there, on off nights, I would still go in just to socialize. Of course. Not to drink, right? I drank at work to make time go by, right? And there's a problem when you can't remember past a certain time. I wouldn't remember past like 11 or 11:30, and I would just wake up the next day. Well, that's a problem.
Yeah, it is.
But with that said, we would go there socially just to hang out and, even just drink water. And she wanted to party balls until it closed. And I just couldn't, it was just too much, you know? And so again, great girl, it just didn't work. And I wanted her to find someone that could actually treat her decent.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and when was marriage number 2? Like how long after that?
Wasn't very long after that.
Okay.
I'm going to say a year.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's my son's mother.
Yeah.
We were married for 10 or 11 years. It was awesome. It was something new. We got along great. I worked out. She worked out. She was a gym rat, everything else. We had a ton of fun together. And then she got pregnant.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things again, what do I do? And I really cared about her and I really wanted it to work, and we got married.
Right.
And it lasted for a while, and we tried to keep it together and stuff like that. It just didn't work.
Right.
And so I actually just had a conversation with her this past weekend. We, talked for an hour and a half while we were driving to Arkansas to see our youngest,
nice,
and we got along well, and, it was a good conversation. So I'm glad that we're in a good spot now, because there's nothing left to fight over at this point.
Right.
There couldn't be, right?
No.
I mean,
no.
And Bristol, they get along. I guess y'all aren't around each other.
Yeah,
though.
we're not around each other, and Bristol can get along with anybody.
Yeah,
I mean, she's just a doll.
She's put up with us at dinner before.
I know, right? Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about Bristol then.
Yeah.
So you got divorced, obviously, the second marriage. How long before you met Bristol? How'd you meet Bristol?
Yeah.
all the good stuff.
It's funny. I actually met Bristol back in the bar days.
Okay.
You know, she was a dance instructor.
Yeah.
She was the girl that came in and danced from the time she got there till the time she left.
Very cool.
You know, we all ran in the same circles.
Did you have a thing for her back then?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's a beautiful woman, man.
yes.
Okay, yeah. So
I had the I had the hots for her. She was in a relationship at the time.
Sure.
I just looked from afar and you know, always admired her. It was later on that I found out that she felt the same way, but she also saw everything that was going on.
Yep.
You know, she saw, you know, the drinking, the running through women, the fights every weekend. She saw all of that.
Yeah.
And she was just like, while she was interested, there was just no way on earth that it would have worked.
I like that, man.
You know,
yeah.
and to admit that. We probably would have had a fling and gone our separate ways, and that's it, right? But she knew that there was no way that it would work. So kind of funny, again, you know, we'd go to Dallas nightclub, hang 'em high, and then dance across Texas, and that was kind of like the little thing if you were in the country scene. You know, Wednesday night you go to the meat market, which was Dallas nightclubs. Back in the day when they did the 69-cent drinks and everything.
Mercy,
and,
man.
You know, and then TABC took that away.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you know, took the fun away.
Oh, yeah.
But, and then we reconnected over Facebook.
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
Of all places. And again, zero intention of ever getting married, ever having a serious relationship or anything else. It was just one of those things that when she had popped up, I was like, that's something I need to explore.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
like this.
So that's how it kind of started.
How soon did she become your actual business partner too? Because you guys are a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And that's got to feel good. But obviously, you didn't go into this relationship thinking that, hey, I can, you know, date an employee or a colleague.
Yeah.
You know, and so how when did that start taking place?
It was years. She's always been in corporate HR, worked for some large companies in HR.
Yeah.
She always held her own, always, you know.
No doubt.
My divorce lasted quite a while.
Okay.
You know,
was
we
it
went
ugly
back
too?
to court.
The second divorce?
Yeah. It was, the first one wasn't ugly at all.
Oh,
really,
okay.
It just kind of stopped. But the divorce with my son's mother was nasty.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It was nasty. It went on for a couple years. And more than anything, myself and her father were very close. And that's where I had to go to during the bankruptcy to actually borrow money from.
Okay, now I got you. Okay. I'm getting the timeline now. Okay,
so more than anything, it was a divorce from him.
Yeah.
You know, so because we were so close,
sure,
that made it hard, right? There's a lot of hurt on that side more than it was her and I, right? So
you guys talk now?
No.
You and the father-in-law don't? Oh, man,
no.
I'm sorry.
I reach out to him, you know, a few times a year, his birthday, holidays. I just texted him the other day after I talked to, you know, my ex as well. I hope to, but, you know, if anything happens, I know that, you know, I've done everything that I can to reach out and just have some sort of association and or talk to him.
Wait, so is he harboring resentment that it didn't work out?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think, and a lot of things were said between the both of us that I'm sure, you know, he's at a point in his life where he's just like, I don't need it. And he's very much the same, you know, it's a good and bad thing. I can kind of write something off and be done with it forever,
Yeah, that's
you know,
and
just be done and never look back. You just flip the switch and, you know.
It's a powerful but unfortunate characteristic sometimes.
100%.
You know, it's nothing to, I mean, at least where I'm concerned, it's nothing to brag about.
Yeah.
And I hate that. It's funny. I have a very good relationship with my father-in-law also. And it's, I can't imagine having to have that talk.
Yeah.
You know, I think the world of him.
Yeah. No,
He'd just have me killed. I mean, he was old school. He was old school.
There's some truth behind that statement.
Yeah, in fact, probably someone would walk in and erase that part of the tape. Just But yeah, he's. I get it, man. It's tough. It's tough.
And he was a semi-support system for myself when my dad and I were not super close, because we went through a period where my dad and I just were not close. You know, and
is that when you had to basically part ways professionally?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that was a big thing. You know, we were selling houses, and I had my dad, you know, listing a lot of them, and you know, I just did not want to feel like I was ever coming down on my dad. I wanted him to be my dad at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and I
that's
wanted to
tough.
preserve that relationship.
Yeah.
And coming from an Italian family, it's basically like, it's almost a given. You've got to give it to them,
Of course.
and everything
Yeah, of
else.
course.
And I wanted the relationship more than anything. So there's, a handful of years we didn't even talk.
Yeah.
Because of that. And I think finally he came around one day and was just like, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
And our relationship was solid, after that, because again, ego was at play.
Yeah.
And the truthful thing behind my entire reasoning was I did not want to ever feel like I had to pick up the phone and yell at him or anything like that, because that's my dad. I never wanted to be in that position.
Mm-hmm.
So it was easier just to do that. Unfortunately, he didn't receive it in the way that, that I meant for him to. So.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, back to, your many successes. Obviously, your current marriage is one of those. And there's no doubt that's going to last your lifetime, right? I want to commend you guys, man, both of you, you and Bristol. You guys celebrate life together, man. I love to see it. I love to see it. Neither one of you are afraid to admit how much you love the other one, very publicly.
Yeah.
And which I love, man. That's not a knock.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy for you, man, that your business is thriving, your family unit is thriving, your marriage is thriving. What's next for you, man? And that's a genuine question. This isn't a, obligatory, what's your goal in 5 years. I genuinely want to know what is next for you guys. What are you doing next?
Well, thank you, number one, for saying that. That means a ton.
Well, it's obvious to anybody around you that you guys are happy.
Yeah.
And so,
well, and it's something that I've learned a lot from her.
Yeah.
To tone my anger down.
Yep.
That was something. She's definitely the yin to my yang, or however it is. She's one of the most level-headed people that I've ever met.
I believe that.
And she understands if I'm in a mood or something like that. And I've said it before. She'll come back. She'll go, hey, see, you're not in a great mood. Not a problem.
Yeah.
Go shoot something. Go hit something. Go lift something. Go do some boy shit.
Sure.
Come back. We can continue then.
Yeah.
And she won't let it go, not in a nagging way or anything else, but she'll come back and approach that subject and go through it. And again, I think that it's the HR background in her.
Yeah.
But it works.
Let me ask, man, that prompted a question from me. Have you learned to have the capacity to do the same for her? Because something tells me, I don't think inherently you possess that. No. But have you learned how to allow her to be in her own space if she's having an off time?
Yeah, and that, to your point, that's something I had to learn.
Yeah,
again,
so you have.
In most cases, I've always known any type of conflict to end in some sort of argument or fight.
Buddy, that's exactly why I'm asking you that question.
Yeah.
So have you tamped that down?
100%.
I love that for you.
And a lot of it was because I didn't know how to deal with a lot of things. And that's why I got into fights all the time.
Sure.
It was just easier to punch someone in the face than it was to try to figure something out.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah.
And most of that's ego, testosterone, and everything else.
Yeah.
And, there's not to say that there's not times that something doesn't infuriate me, but she is the one that can stomp that faster than anybody else.
That's
within
a good woman,
2
man.
seconds,
Yeah.
and it's because it took years for me to truly trust her.
Yeah.
Right. Not because of anything she did, but just because of the past. Right. Again, if something was ever brought up, or I always use it as an example, I would come home and she'd go, "Hey, what'd you do for lunch?" And I immediately thought, because of past relationships, oh, you did that? Oh, who'd you go with? Why were you there?
Yeah.
Those were the things that I was used to hearing, where she just wanted to know what I had for lunch, so she didn't make that for dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, and it took years for her to go, hey,
exactly.
I have a true interest in you. I'm not here to fight with you.
Yeah.
And that's her take on everything. So that takes learning, right? Because you are a product of your environment, and things that continuously happen, you have defense mechanisms that are built up.
Mm-hmm.
So I give all the credit in the world to what I am today is because of her, hands down.
That's
100%.
You're damn right.
You know, she's my biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
I never have to worry about where she stands.
Sure.
She will always have my back, whether I'm right or wrong. And she has said that. She's like, that is my position in life, is to always support and have your back.
Well, man.
Man, I know we're wrapping this up or getting close. You know, everybody, I just have one question. Everybody defines, we've used the word success a lot throughout this particular podcast. We all have our different definitions of success. A, what is your definition of success? And B, do you, at this point in your life, consider yourself successful?
Yeah, you know, it's you kind of compartmentalize some of those things, right? You know, you have kind of a business success, a personal success, and an overall success. And I want to get back to one of the things that you had said, that we constantly seem to celebrate life. That was something I never did.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was just nose to the grindstone, run forward, run through whatever you're in. But she slowed me down to understand how to celebrate life. Her thing was, I would much rather take this money and travel to create memories, because we know that tomorrow it could all be gone.
Absolutely.
But the one thing that can never be taken are those memories you created together. And I never thought of it that way, right? You know, and that's why we do a ton of things. You know, we'll spend money doing those versus several different monetary type things, right? My wife is spoiled, not because she wants to be, because again, I want to give that to her, right?
Love it.
You know, and that's just my way. I've always I'm a gifts guy. You know, and that's how I've tended to show love and appreciation. And she has, again, helped me be that way. But to get back to your question on success, that's a big part of success to me, is being happy in your heart, in your soul, and understanding that you have finally accomplished the relationship that most people would love to have.
Yeah.
Financially, it's always going to be more and more and more, right? Not because of the monetary aspect, but just overcoming hurdles. Life to me and business to me is a puzzle, and there's 100 different ways that you can manipulate that game to come out to be successful for yourself and your partners and your investors. So I love that, because it's a mind thing for me, right? It's a giant puzzle. So that I'll work, and I'll do that until the day I die.
Yeah.
And again, not necessarily as much of a monetary thing. And then being successful by having a good name. Austin's a small town. Everybody knows everybody.
You are damn right it is.
So if you can die and have people look at you and go, that he was a good man.
Yes.
That's success to me.
Absolutely.
To have someone by my side that loves me, and kids that can take hopefully what I taught them to their kids and their future kids, and to be able to leave something behind. One of the things that I've always thought was super cool about construction and building and stuff is my kids and my grandkids will be able to drive down the street and go, my dad or my grandfather or whatever built that, you know, X years ago, or did this, that, and the other, so that they felt a sense of family pride.
Yeah, man.
That's important to me. And not necessarily for the structure itself, but for the belief system that I hopefully have instilled in them to do the same things and be successful, however they define that in their lifetime.
Very well said, man. Very, very well said. Last question, we'll end. Are you happy?
I'm happy.
Are you?
I'm incredibly happy. Almost uncomfortably happy. Because again, some of that goes back and reverts every once in a while to, when's the rug going to get pulled out?
Absolutely.
You know, that's always in the back of my mind. When is the rug going to get pulled out, right? And it could happen at any point. But I think that the foundation, the people that I surround myself with, I don't think that I care about that as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm old enough to realize I only want to hang out with people I want to hang out with.
Yes.
Life's too short to be in, you know, fights with people and this, that, and the other. It's even like the legal process, you know. You can sue a ham sandwich. Is it really worth it at the end of the day?
Right.
You know, people need to work together a little bit more to hit the same goals and help others succeed. And that's one of the things that I'm into now, is trying to help as many people as humanly possible. I don't know everything. I know a little bit. So if there's something that I can share with an individual, that's good for me. That's payback alone.
Yeah, man.
I love that. That's payment to my heart.
Right.
And so I love doing those things. So that success is being in a spot where you feel from an unegotistical place that you can help someone in a positive manner and make sure that they know that you don't expect anything in return.
Right.
It's the best thing ever.
Damn right. Yeah. This was really enjoyable, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you being so, honest and open. And
absolutely, and that's the way it's always going to be.
Oh, I know that.
There's no rules to this, and that's what we said going into this. I expect to go over those lines, and we got to have those conversations, and hopefully it helps other individuals look at their lives and have those conversations with their friends too.
Anything you want to add that we might have missed out on? I mean, this is new to us, buddy.
I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's got their story, right? And it's always interesting. You're constantly going to be learning from one another. And the day that you close your mind to not learn is the day you stop growing, right? Man. And it did take me years to understand that. I was well into my 30s before I went. I slowed down and thought about that, right? Not everybody that's trying to teach you something is trying to get one over on you, right? And it's understanding those who are good, and it takes a while sometimes to see that heart and soul of somebody,
right?
But it's keeping an open mind to be able to see that, because if you keep your mind closed, you'll never see it,
right?
So while again we're men and we're tough and loaded with testosterone and everything else, it's nice to be able to have those that you can communicate and open up with and learn from and be cool with that.
You're right.
So that's about it, man.
Thank you very much, Mike.
And I appreciate you guys. This is a friendship that's growing immensely.
Right.
And I'm glad we're able to share this with others, and hopefully they can learn something from it as well.
Yes, sir.
And y'all are going to be in the seat soon too. So
Chad's next, right?
Yeah.
You know what's interesting, and I know we have to wrap it up, but I'm more anxious. I'm not kidding, man. To take a deep dive with Chad. I'm dead serious. I mean, who knows? I think I know everything about him.
Yeah.
But and not meaning more anxious than you than I was
about to say, man, that's a hell of a way to end.
No. I don't receive it that way at all.
I just should say I'm really looking forward, because you just learn so much when you give someone the seat, right? Yeah. And even with my twin brother, because I just learned so much about you. And so maybe let me rephrase that. I'm as anxious to hear about Chad too. So thanks for giving us your time.
No,
man.
I'm excited to see that, just to see the experiences that you guys even shared, and how they were perceived by different eyes. Well, that's what I'm excited to hear about.
Thank you for your story. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate sharing it.
Yes, sir.